Hey guys, hope your Friday is going well. We've had a very interesting overnight and morning period in the markets, to say the least. Now, let's go straight to BTC on this one to dissect what's actually occurred overnight, especially whilst I was in my sleep. I've woken up and seen a very strange price behavior from this region here. So going over to the 4 hour, first of all, we have the $4,120 region, which I did mark out as a spike zone. Now, as you can see, we perfectly arise not only on the trend line, but also on that $4,120 region. And what followed from there was an absolutely huge explosion straight to the 4,200 region, falling just below that zone right there, which technically does validate the 4,200 retest. However, I'm very surprised that this move has come through so soon. Now, there's a very interesting scenario at play here, and there's two scenarios I'm now awaiting for. There is the possibility, although we have not broken the main trend line, we have to remember this is simply just a spike. If we extend out to my external trend line here, we can see we have broken out of the temporary intraday trend line and the intraday trend line, but we have not broken from the main external wick to wick trend line. So what's really gathering here for me is I do believe this is still a cause for another reversal, and potentially a much bigger reversal, breaking through this trend line and actually landing back to the 3,760 region to 3,800 region. Now, the reason being is because of the premature break of this trend line here. I do believe this is a false break, and if I dip down to the 4 hour, I can explain these scenarios a bit more precisely, because there are two main targets to now take into consideration here. I believe we could be seeing some volatility around this zone as well, so I would pay special attention. Again, if you're identifying short opportunities, I would await a potentially more closer signal. But pending this breakout from the trend line, I do believe we're expecting a pullback to at least 4,115. Approximately just in between this green zone here, or even back to 4120 to this region here as well. I do believe that will be the first pullback region that we will see occurring, but from there there's two ways we can really dictate this. Now, if this level holds from this region here, I do believe that will be a great cause for another retest back to the upside of around 4180 once again to 4200. However, overall I see happening is this trend line should be the first thing that comes into play. Personally, I do believe there will be one final retest of this trend line before we do continue that upsell higher. However, looking overall at the bigger picture right now, something just doesn't seem right, and although we are still impending the overdue upside breakout, it just doesn't feel very right to me right now that it's going to occur right now. If you look at this similar instance here, we saw many breaches and attempts to break this region, and maybe if I draw a little highlighted manipulation zone up here, this zone could be very easily spiked and then dropped lower. So if you want to go ahead and try and catch a long through manipulative spike, please do so, but I wouldn't really recommend it, as you are buying at the highs, which is fairly risky stuff. So I wouldn't really consider that personally. However, looking at this overall, I still feel there's going to be a very sharp downside movement, at least down to this region, before we continue to these further upside targets of 4,700. And going over to XRP, as you can see, this is where the strangeness has really began, because despite caution of 3,160 has actually been met pretty much precisely again, falling just short of that level, which absolutely plummeted price lower. So all I've really done for this trade is move my stop loss to literally where the prior wicks were, not looking to take any more risk on this crazy volatility, especially with the other pairs now soaring to the upside. It wouldn't really be wise, because XRP surge did not match the BTC and Ether surge, and I was very fortunate to be in the XRP trade versus the BTC and Ether trade, because there was a mass inverse correlation for some strange reason. And judging from prices now, just looking at this weakness overall and using XRP as a slight guidance, I just feel that push down to this level is still most definitely in play. And the way this market is moving, especially with BTC and Ether, which we'll get to in a second as well, with this huge steep drop, I actually believe the fall could be even further than expected now. It's just something I'm being cautious of, especially on the daily right now. an excellent way to dictate what's been occurring. Spikes, 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 rejections of 0.315 to 0.316, pulling lower. I wouldn't be surprised if this thing just snaps down to around 0.285 as well at the rate it's moving. It just doesn't seem sufficient for an upside breakout right now. And using Ether as another dictator, the initial projected spike zone, if I drag this down, was 143, around there. However, we'll drag this up to here for now, because using this 144 resistance level, you can see that although we did spike to a peak of almost $156, price is now pulling back on the daily ever so quickly and rejecting this $144 region as well. So the same kind of principles with Ether. Again, we've thrown and just exploded through this trend line now, and I do believe there is an overall retest due of this trend line anywhere from, extending this out quite nicely now, to around $133, $132, breaking through to the lower spectrum of this trend line as well. So I do believe, pardon me, there is still sufficient weakness in the market, and I do not believe this is going to cause a major surge just yet. It just doesn't seem too convincing right now. I know many people are anticipating this, but it just seems like there is going to be one final pullback, which I believe could be coming into play soon around this level, correlating nicely with $130, testing that trend line. And again, if we do see that extra sharp downside momentum, which would take XRP down to 28.5 cents, take BTC down to $3,800, I do believe Ether could drop all the way down to around $105 as well, should we see such significant movement like that. And it's not looking unlikely right now. I am not taking these spikes with a pinch of salt. I do not believe they're going to cause too much harm right now. Again, should you see a clean break of this level right here, expect another spike to this level that could breach the trend line around $150. But looking at this market overall right now, it's still not too convincing for me, seeing the slowing down momentum of these prices. So again, major trend line in play as well. There is an impending breakout, and I believe what will happen now is many people who are anticipating a huge upside breakout will be potentially let down by what could be a pretty devastating breakout of this trend line here. And then from there, it absolutely explodes to the upside. So we've got to try and remain ahead of the market right now. We're seeing all these tricks, and we're all anticipating the same breakout level, which means we must think ahead of the average trader, not get too excited, not get too anticipated on a huge upside explosion, because we could very easily see prices drop down to here before they continue higher. So I thought this market update was necessary after seeing such a strange correlation in the markets this morning, and of course seeing these strange manipulative movements. Just wanted to let you know as well, the XRP short is still in play for now. However, should we start spiking to these regions, I will just get out and await to see what this market does next. But overall projections are remaining the same, and judging from this movement right now, I do believe it could even get a little bit worse. So take into consideration Ether as well with this zone here. As long as this doesn't really break as well, we're pretty much impending another wick zone where all the sell orders could be, which could just sharpshoot us straight back down to the ground. So just taking these facts into consideration, guys, very interesting period in the market. Who really knows if this breakout will occur? I'm not really too sure it will right now. I mean, looking at the weekly as well, a lot of bullish momentum. I believe one sharp spike down, very similar to a movement like this actually, where it's sharp spike down, tests and absolutely explodes. Very similar to these movements you see here as well. From a weekly perspective, when you look at it, you do understand the overall picture and how much more realistic it is, as it occurs all the time on the weekly time frame. Huge bullish momentum, again, huge spike just like this, huge spike just like this. Price climbed up, potentially breached it for all we know, pulled all the way back down to where that wick was. And again, look where that huge spike there was, wicks around this region and the candle bodies. We pulled back to there and then blew through the roof. And the same occurred here with all these regions as well. Spikes down, retested, boom. Huge region here around 3,700 or 3,800, anywhere near that region. Looking at a very similar movement. So using BTC as a staple, I do believe it could be seeing that level very soon as well. So do not be fooled just yet by all of this upside momentum. It could be very falsified, and it could be an overall agenda to short the living shit out of this market back down to 3,760 to 3,800 overall. So what I'll do is I'll I'll just extend that zone there, make it nice and clear for you all. And yeah, overall, let's just see how this unfolds. Again, I'll be monitoring throughout the day, hoping to see this level has not broken, so another short opportunity could be provided. Again, if you want to enter your shorts from now after such a spike, says or eventually the overall market bias is short anyway. If you are now trying to enter short, you've technically found a much better price than it would have been at this region anyway. So ideally, stop losses would have to be very wide. I'm talking above 4,320 on BTC. Shorts on a movement like this, again for myself, I'd rather just get out clean, break even, whatever happens, and then enter again. Spike cautions, again 3160 remains, but right now the way this thing's moving so psychopathic, just be cautious of around 3,200 as well. It just seems like quite a significant level, and if it spikes up to there quickly, you could catch a short. Stop loss just above this region around 3,300, and hopefully catch that overall move down. And as for Ether, well, the same principles apply. Potential short opportunity can be found from this zone as well. Stop losses, of course, above $148 because it could be a very large swing. However, the downside momentum and the downside opportunity is still much larger than I anticipated. So I do believe this will cause a slight breakout very shortly to the downside once again, and we can continue on our merry way down to the original expected targets. No market bias has changed as of yet, guys. So again, more updates to come shortly. Let's see how this plays out. I'm looking forward to seeing if we can get an incredible short